welcome to the podcast. We don't have a name for it. No, we do. It's called the Rollercoaster podcast.
What's going on?
Good to have you. You look familiar. I feel like I've known you my whole life.
Yep.
Which is very interesting. We also might look similar for guests who are watching at home. And that's because I have the pleasure of having my brother, Derek, on the podcast today. So welcome to Arizona.
Thanks for having me.
Happy that you're here. So let's get right into it. So you've been living in Brazil since 2005. You're a multiple time founder and CEO. You're a venture capital investor. You've invested in roughly 50 companies. And you're a son of Wayne and Jill Hall, who are also my parents, which is fantastic. So that's all the audience needs to know right now. Let's dive right in.
Let's go.
So I want to start off with a question that I think will help the audience get to know you better, which is, what is one defining moment that has made you who you are today, an inflection point that happened in your life that made you who you are today?
Yeah, I think there's when I think about the inflection points in my life that made me who I am today, there's probably 3 or 4. I'd say the one that stands out in my recent history was about 3 or 4 years ago. I was going through a rough time in my life and discovered therapy. So I was basically, I would say having one of those moments in life that couple, family relationships were not going so well, probably a lot of trauma from the past, and was with a friend, basically complaining about how bad my life was, and this guy said, "Look, you can figure this out probably pretty easily through therapy or through coaching." So I actually went back to San Francisco, where I was living at the time, got connected to a therapist, started doing therapy, and I'd say within a couple of months, life was turned around. I was feeling great about life, and started gaining some of these tools, these psychological tools to approach life in a much different way. So yeah, therapy 3 or 4 years ago was a life-changing moment for me that has given me a much better foundation to approach every day.
For people that might be scared of doing therapy or too prideful or other things, I know I've been that way in my life in the past, like maybe help people understand what therapy really is all about so they can feel comfortable if they want to explore doing that.
Yeah, like the human experience is super complicated. We grow up with parents. Everybody has their own unique experience. Sometimes your parents are great, but maybe a bit overbearing, maybe trying to control your life a bit too much. Other times, not in our situation. We had amazing parents that were always there for us, always providing for us, but you go through life really wanting to please them. And it creates these habits of people pleasing, I think. And I think when you really break down therapy and you talk about your history and your past, and you uncover a lot of these maybe reasons for why you are the way that you are, then you can start taking a different approach to life, where maybe trying to please everybody all the time is not the right path. And when you're able to cross that chasm of, I'm not living my life for others, I'm not seeking validation in others all the time, but I'm doing things on my terms. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm living, my most authentic self. I think that's where you can really break through and live a happy life.
Nice. That's amazing. Yeah, thanks for opening up and sharing that and being vulnerable. Next thing I want to talk about is I'm always very intrigued when I talk to founders, multiple time founders, about their areas of mastery. And this is something that I call the zone of genius, right? So I know you're familiar with what the zone of genius is, but for those who don't know, essentially it's this idea that when you do things that you're good at and that you also love to do, it provides energy, and energy equates to all of the right outcomes that we're seeking as a business, right? Better morale, better culture, right? Better performance, et cetera. So let's talk about your zone of genius. What's maybe the one area of mastery slash zone of genius that you think you've mastered the best in life? And let's also talk about, do you feel like this was sort of learned over time or nurtured, or do you feel like it was more DNA or nature based?
Yeah, I would say before we get into what I think, my zone of genius is, I, like many CEOs, many founders, have tons of insecurities. There's a million things that I'm not good at. I'm not that organized. I'm not, I don't consider myself a great operator when it comes to kind of the day-to-day operations of a business. I've never thought of myself as good at that. But what I have figured out over the years is, one of the things that I am good at is building relationships, building that network of people around me that can help me succeed. Motivating that network, motivating those people that are working with me to get the job done, because I do have so many weaknesses. But focusing on that quality that maybe is a strength of mine allows me to do that one thing very well, and then bring in other great people around me who can fill in all of the gaps for all the various weaknesses that I have. But yeah, I'd say building a network, building relationships has always felt very natural to me. I think one of my first jobs out of college was with a private equity firm at the time it was called the Rock Fund. Now it's called Bridge Investment Group. And there was my two bosses, the CEO and one of the other co-founders of the firm, Don Hartman and Paul Hutchinson. These guys definitely taught me, what it meant to sell, what it meant to build relationships. We were on a daily basis meeting with millionaires and billionaires and people that manage a lot of money, trying to get those investors to invest in our private equity firm. And one of the lessons I learned from Paul and Don was, if you take the approach of trying to add value up front in a relationship, and let's say you're trying to build a relationship with someone, there's a clear incentive to build that relationship. Instead of trying to take from that relationship early on, kind of reverse it and think about, how can I add value to this relationship today, and build that relationship where the person on the other side is going to trust me, they're going to respect me. I've brought in so much value to their life that they're going to now want to do business with me potentially. But not even, I'd call it, another way of putting that is long-term greed. What are the things that you can do in the short term that are not going to provide an immediate financial benefit, for example, but that are going to empower you in the long term to build a relationship with someone? And over time, maybe it's 10, 20 years from now, you've got that relationship built, and now there's a foundation to potentially make money together or explore other opportunities together. There's the wealthiest person in Brazil today is a guy named Jorge Paulo Lemann. Him and his two partners are very successful entrepreneurs. Today, these guys are the controlling shareholders for Anheuser-Busch InBev and Kraft Heinz and Restaurant Brands International and many other businesses. And one of their closest partners today is Warren Buffett. And I'm going to get the quote wrong, but, Georgie Paulo basically said, the first deal that they did together was Kraft Heinz. They acquired Kraft and Heinz and merged the two businesses. And I think he said something to the effect that this was a 20, 30-year relationship in the works before they actually did any business together. And so I'm sure it was a lot of knowledge sharing and value add happening along the way. And then when the opportunity came up to do business together, it was a no-brainer. And to my knowledge, I think it was like a 1-page term sheet that Warren Buffett asked for, and they signed the deal. And it was like probably, something upwards of a $10 billion investment or something like that.
One thing specifically that that you taught me, which was this idea that you can bring people together in really unique ways to build the network and build relationships. One of them is this sort of dinner series idea that you planted in my mind that I'm now doing, which is a every other month dinner where I invite select founders and CEOs, 12 to 15 of them, into a room together where we have a nice dinner in an intimate setting in my home. And, I think we were talking about this and I said, what's the main reason why you do this? You said something to the effect of the whole purpose of these dinners is to show up and add value, right? And when you think about most of these types of networking events and dinners and other things that founders and VCs and the like get invited to all the time, typically you have like 20% of the audience that's sucking all of the value out of the room and 80% that's giving, right? And so how do you change that to where everybody is just there to try and lean into what everybody else is working on and create value for each other? And so I love that, I wanted to share that.
Yeah,
you taught me that.
My general philosophy, so one of the questions I get the most often from people is, how did you build this world-class network? And so I never had a great answer for it other than, I'm curious, I ask interesting questions, I'm a likable guy, all of these kind of, potentially BS answers that were not super thoughtful. But I always thought maybe this is something that just comes natural to me. And I do think there's an aspect of, some people are very comfortable communicating with others. It comes very natural to build a lot of these relationships. But I actually sat down and tried to break it down into first principles. How is a world-class network actually built? And when I broke it down, it's actually pretty simple. If you ask the question, why, why would you want to build a world-class network? What is the value in doing that? What comes to mind is the more value I add to that network, the more the network rewards me for that value. So the bigger and stronger my network is, the more empowered I'm going to be in the world, in the economy, as an individual, in kind of the business marketplace, if you will. And then you ask yourself, okay, so if adding value is the key ingredient to building a world-class network, what does it mean to add value? And I think adding value can be summed up in two parts. One is leveling up the network or increasing the knowledge of that network. The other one is increasing the influence of that network or connecting the network together. And so when you think about how I've built a lot of my relationships, a lot of it comes through introductions. And so it is a bit of a network effect. When you start building that network, and I meet someone tomorrow who's doing something super interesting, it's very natural for me to then think, okay, I now know what their objective is. Because I know what their objective is, and because I know what the objective of maybe a couple hundred other friends are, potentially there's synergies there. If I connect person X to person Y, I'm not only adding value to one of them, but I'm adding value to both of them. And it took me about 1 minute to actually make that introduction, and I get all of the credit for it. And so I'm increasing my influence with those people by connecting two of those nodes on the network, if you will. And the same goes for leveling people up or increasing the knowledge. And so when we talk about these founder dinners, what is essentially happening is you can bring 10 people together. You're now introducing one person to 9 other people. There's a 2 or 3 hour dinner of storytelling and shared experiences. And usually when founders get together, they're talking about the hard times and the good times, and they're sharing advice with each other. And so those two principles are at play during that dinner, where everyone's being leveled up, everyone's increasing their knowledge, everyone's increasing their own network, and those are basically the fundamental ingredients to building a world-class network, I think.
Amazing. Yeah, I've never seen somebody that was better than you, and I think, you get asked this question a lot, but maybe no more than I've asked you in my life. I feel like I've asked you this question 100 times in the last 10 years, right? So let's sort of open this up. Why are you in Arizona, right? You don't live here. You live in Brazil.
Came back to the U.S. About a week ago for a wedding, and I think that the main reason I'm in Arizona, though, is you and I, last time I was in town, was this 2 or 3 months ago. We were at Mom and Dad's house in the mountains in Wyoming, and spending a lot of time together. We started, I think we realized that we have a lot of similar objectives in life, and that if you and I work together on those objectives, then we're much more, we're much stronger in executing those. And so, you're one of my coaches now. I would say life coaches and executive coaches. We talk probably on a daily basis now. And so coming here for a week and spending quality time with you, strategizing about the future, and, kind of keeping myself in check, and vice versa, is extremely valuable to me. We can get into our past a bit, but you and I have always been very competitive with each other. Maybe even to the extent where, 5-6 years ago, we were so competitive with each other where we actually didn't even have a very good relationship. I think that, when you break down the psychology of that, as kids, we're both vying for attention from our parents. That creates a competitive environment between siblings. And you kind of take those with you into adulthood until one day you have a very honest conversation with each other, realize, why are we competing and not collaborating? And I think that was one of the realizations you and I had a few years ago. And then a few months ago, I think the agreement that you and I made was basically, let's be business partners. Let's be partners in life. Let's hold each other accountable. Let's coach each other. And if we do that, then, then we're going to do everything much better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a very big blessing to have this sort of relationship now. Right. And I think when you say we were, I think you say it kind of softly that we weren't on the same page, but like we were actually like rivals, almost like rooting against each other, which is insane when you look back. Like the idea that that you were going to be more successful or more fulfilled or whatever it was going to be in life, like hurt me, right? And that's so insane to look back and think that that's the way that it was. But
we were both extremely insecure back then. I think we still have a lot of insecurities. This is kind of, one of the missions in life is to overcome these insecurities over time. And we were probably both looking for attention from mom and dad, the other people in our lives, and viewed each other as kind of competitive in that way, until we got over that and realized that's not the path to happiness and fulfillment, and let's take another path.
Yeah, I fully agree. And yeah, I'm glad that we're on the same page. And just to expand on that a little bit more, right? Like you're the CEO of a company that you founded 2 years ago now. How long has it been officially?
About a year ago, little over a year ago, we officially started the company.
Yeah, you were thinking about the idea. I know,
Early 2021, yeah.
Year before that or so. You're, in addition to being CEO of a company, you launched a podcast in Brazil.
Yep.
Right. And I know that you still spend time, in addition to being a CEO and having a podcast, investing in companies.
Yep.
And advising companies, and even helping sort of unofficially coach and mentor some CEOs, right? So,
Yep.
so how do you and by the way, for those listening, that's very similar to what I'm doing, except I'm not running a company, right? I exited a company last year. I left the parent company just a few months ago. So now I'm focused on coaching CEOs, coaching executive teams, and doing the podcast. So how do you balance all of that, right? And is it cool with your team, your investors, that you're not just a full-time CEO only thinking, breathing your company? Like how do you make this all come together?
Yeah, to me, it's all the same thing. It's all, my role as CEO is really what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. When I think about investing and advising other founders, that's just a natural extension to what I've already been doing for the last 5 years when I started venture investing. And I also think there is a bit of a network or value effect when you're talking to other entrepreneurs all the time. Because the reality is, as a founder and CEO, in order to be successful, in order to be happy, you need a group of other founders and CEOs in your friend group, in your close circle, that you're talking to all the time, that you're sharing, the hard times, and you're being vulnerable, you're being emotional, you're strategizing together. And so investing in other people's companies, for me, is really just an extension of all of that, which is it allows me to be close to other founders and CEOs who are all super successful, who I can learn a ton from, who can connect me to their networks, and really add a value to my life as a founder and CEO of a company. Which, when you are the founder and CEO of a company, a big part of what you're doing is relying on your network to get things done. And so having that network of other founders, of other investors that I'm in constant communication with, brings a ton of value to me in my day job as a founder and CEO of a company.
Nice. So much so is that something you'd recommend to other founder CEOs that are in the same seat, or does it take a certain type of person to do what you're doing?
Yeah, I think, I moved down to Brazil 10 years ago. At the time, there was probably 30 startups. We all knew each other. We were all first timers. Nobody was investing in anybody else at the time. Now, if you look at my group of friends in Brazil, who are all founders and CEOs, they're also all angel investors or also VCs as well. And so I think it's probably just a natural evolution of, when you're a second, third time founder, you've been doing this for a decade or so. Maybe you've got a little bit of capital to work with now. You're diversifying. You also see the value in investing in other people's companies, because it's really an opportunity to learn from those founders and to grow your network and to grow your skills and your abilities. So yeah, I don't think it's would definitely recommend other people doing it. I think it also is probably a function of where you're at in your career. If you're a 20-year-old first-time founder, probably don't have much capital to be investing in other startups. And so maybe the strategy there is put together dinners with other founders who are, kind of first-time founders or around your age, people that you can easily get along with and collaborate with and add value to. And I think that's, there's various ways of doing that, but ultimately, if you're a founder and you're not building that network of other founders and other investors, you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunity.
There's segments that I've heard on other podcasts where they talk about tools that people use in their lives and like top 1, top 2, top 3 recommendations. So I want to know your top 3 tools or products to run your life.
Yeah. So, 2 of the software tools that I'm looking at all the time are Notion and Trello. So Trello is where I track my objectives, my goals, and kind of move them along. Notion is really a place for me to take my thoughts and put them on paper. So it's where I do writing. And then I'd say like, if I had to have a third tool today, and not a software tool, but someone who's on my team, someone who's very close to me, someone who's an extension of me today is my chief of staff, Guy, who you met recently. Guy, together with these software tools, basically helps me run my life today as an executive. So yeah.
Nice. That's a good one. That's a good tool, and he's your chief of staff, and I think you use him in a very unique way. We've talked a lot about chief of staff because it's part of the Mochari method, which is what I use in my coaching for CEOs. Tell me what changed. This is the first time you've had a chief of staff in your life, right?
Yeah, life-changing.
Multiple companies, 15 years running companies, first time you've had a chief of staff. What does that bring to you as a CEO?
Yeah, I think the previous question you'd asked about zone of genius, I think it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day of running a company, doing things that, one, totally drain me, burn me out. Usually those things are things that I'm not good at, that I don't enjoy doing. And so having a chief of staff, who's extremely organized, who knows me as well as anybody, and who I really view as an extension to myself, allows me to do the things that I'm good at, that I enjoy doing, the things that energize me. And my chief of staff can do a lot of the other things that I need to get done, but I don't necessarily want to do or organize. Mark Andreessen, he was on a podcast this past week called The Good Time Show with Artie and Sharam from Andreessen Horowitz. And he was talking about these 2 personality traits, industrious and orderliness. I think a lot of founders fall into the bucket of industrious. They're very creative. They're visionaries. They're unorganized a lot of the time, and they're very good at creating momentum and moving things forward. They're not so great at the organizational part, the orderliness part. And so having someone on your side who can help balance you out in that regard, I think is super powerful. And yeah, we've been doing this now for 30 days or so, and my energy levels have never been higher as a founder and CEO of a company.
So I think there's this myth that exists with founder and CEO, especially first-time founders, which is that you should just do everything and suck it up, right? If there's things that need to get done, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you and you have to do them, right? I fell into this trap. You've fallen into this trap in the past. The problem is when you're not doing things that you're great at and that you love, it's energy draining, right? You're only ever doing things that are increasing energy or draining your energy, right? Yeah. And so the whole idea here is around the zone of genius and the energy audit is if you're stuck doing the things that you don't want to do and you never feel energized, it leads to all the negative outcomes, which are like which are like not feeling happy or fulfilled in your work, having worse relationships. Typically your health gets worse, mental and physical health, right? Your mindset tends to be disorganized, right? Because you're always doing things that, again, are sucking the life out of you. When you get home to your loved ones, whoever those people might be, you're a negative person, you're not happy, and it sort of creates this very negative compounding effect, right?
If you're not energized at the office as the CEO of the company, good luck getting everybody else energized, and good luck getting that momentum going.
Right. And so I think the point there is, if you're a CEO and you have investors and the board and the public and your customers and other people pressuring you to do things that don't create energy, you should think long and hard about whether or not you should do those things, right? Because the opposite is when you are energized in your work, your relationships are better. Typically your health is better. There's studies on this that are scientifically proven. Yeah. Your mindset's typically better. Your confidence level's higher, which leads to better performance, better productivity, right? Ultimately, that's what we're seeking for. And then if you can get the rest of the company to do that, that's like the magic ticket.
And there are times when you need to, in the ideal situation, you're spending 90% to 100% of your time doing things that you enjoy doing, that you're good at, that bring you a lot of energy. There are other times when you're going to have to do things that you don't enjoy doing, that are mentally draining, that just bring exhaustion in general to your life. And I think the best way to approach those times are by saying, look, this is a temporary moment. Maybe it's a 1, 2, 3 month period of time where we need to get a certain piece of the business organized. The only person that can do that is me and a few people on my team. You look at what Elon did a couple years ago at Tesla when they were struggling, with the manufacturing cars. He was sleeping on the floor in the manufacturing plant for like days at a time. Did he need to do that? I don't know. He didn't. But I think what he was doing was saying, look, sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Sometimes you have to do things that are extremely uncomfortable for brief moments at a time so that we can get to that next phase. And then we can, hire the right people to take over those roles and get those things done in the long term. You definitely can't do energy draining activities for a long time. You can for a short period of time, but you need to have that perspective that we have a plan of how we're actually going to execute this in the short term, hand it off to someone else in the midterm, and continue to move forward.
Yeah, totally agree. There's 7 questions that are evergreen questions on the podcast, and I want to rattle them off, and I'd love to get your answers and perspectives on these. So the first one is, I'm a big routine guy. You know this about me. It's one of my superpowers, right? And I think it gives me a huge competitive advantage. Not everybody is, right? So I'd love to, first question is, do you have a morning routine? If so, or a daily routine? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I'm not the best at routines, not as disciplined as you are. I think you wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and get a workout, do an ice bath. You're hardcore in that sense. I'm not. What I like to do in the morning is have a cup of coffee. I'm a big walker, and so ideally I'm going on a 45-minute, 1 hour walk and clearing my head. Trying not to do too much thinking, basically trying to just, get my system going in the morning and then go to the office and start executing.
Nice. The walking thing's actually really become interesting to me. Like the idea that you don't think about anything, but you just let your mind be free in the early parts of the day, but also get grounded to the earth, right? I think the combination of those two things actually sets up for something really special. I have a friend that I'm really close to, also an auto tech founder. Their company's doing very well, named Kevin, and he does the same thing every day where he walks the same like 3 or 4 mile loop. And it seems like a very intense biohack to starting the day and getting your mind right.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's the. I don't know if you've seen or listened to any of Mark Zuckerberg's recent interviews, like on Tim Ferriss or Joe Rogan. Been thinking about his kind of approach to this, which is he does jujitsu or foil boarding in the morning for an hour. These are two activities that basically force him to be hyper-focused for 60-minute periods at a time. If you lose focus for even 1 second, you're going to fall off the board, or you're going to, from a jiu-jitsu standpoint, you're going to fail, I guess. And for him, that 60-minute intense period where you can't be thinking about anything else is kind of a 1 hour meditation that allows his mind to reset, and then approach the day from a positive standpoint. So I started doing boxing recently, and am seeing those benefits. I'm not doing it on a day-to-day basis, but a couple times a week. And yeah, I think one of the things I'm trying to work on is getting myself in shape. And I think there's also a ton of value in kind of these intense workouts or intense whatever it may be that allows you to take your focus away from work for 60 minutes a day, think about something else, and kind of reset.
So you asked me, earlier this week, Monday, I was in a motorcycle accident, right, at the track. It's my favorite passion is riding and racing motorcycles at the track. And I came home, and you basically pulled me aside and sat me down and gave me a little lecture, right, which was questioning.
Yep. You and I couldn't have that conversation 3 years ago. Now we have enough trust where I can actually call you out on your bullshit and vice versa.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So your question to me was why are you doing this, right? And my wife has had some things happen in her life that, riding a motorcycle doesn't seem like the practical or responsible thing to do, being her husband. And so you brought this up and you asked the question, and I gave you an answer, but what you just said actually made me realize that the main reason why I do that is the same reason Zuckerberg does jiu-jitsu and foil boarding, which is it's really hard for somebody like me, like us, to clear our minds completely of the world and everything that's going on. And that's what that does for me. I can't be focused on anything else because you're going at high speeds, you're on the circuit, you can run the risk of crashing at any time at high speeds. And I think it's the one place where I can fully get out of the world and just be 100% present and focused on that thing at that time. So question number 2, if you were down to your last $1,000, what would you do with it?
I think I would ask myself, okay, who are the people that I really respect and maybe aspire to be like? I would go to their website, figure out which books they highly recommend. So I've actually done this before. I've got kind of these unofficial mentors in my life who I actually don't even know personally, but have a relationship with them kind of via podcasts, via blog posts, via Twitter. I think, they really speak to me. So these are like the Mark Andreessens of the world, the Keith Rabois of the world, Balaji Srinivasan, folks like this what are the books that they highly recommend? And I'd spend that $1,000 on Audible and on Kindle, buying those books, trying to level myself up and increasing my value in the world.
Very good. Now, this podcast is called the Rollercoaster for a reason, right? I think too often we love talking about the peaks, the high points, the successes, but I don't think success is made at the top of the mountain, right? It's made in the valleys. And so I want to hear maybe one time in your life where you failed, like miserably, like flat on your face. And what did you learn from that? How did that help you sort of level up moving forward?
So many failures. I'd say, the one that comes to mind would be the failure of my first business. And it's, I was a first-time founder, thought I had a lot of stuff figured out, was running the business for the first couple of years. At one point, a couple of my investors and business partners approached me and said, hey, this thing's gotten kind of big. Maybe we should put someone else in as the CEO. That was, an extremely painful moment of my life where I was questioning myself. My confidence was extremely low. I was embarrassed because this company that I had started and was running, I'm no longer running the show anymore. When all of your best friends happen to be entrepreneurs and you're getting, ousted in a sense from your business, I didn't have the right mental frameworks at the time to handle that, and basically went into a deep state of, depression for several months, maybe even a year or two. I ended up getting out of it. The two things that come to mind: read a book by Ryan Holiday called "The Obstacle Is the Way." This book really helped me frame, that specific challenge in my life and view it as a good thing that happened to me instead of a negative thing. And then, starting therapy probably a year after that, and really, really reapproaching life from a different mindset.
So you're obviously one of the most connected guys in tech in Latin America. You've got an extremely robust network in the US as well, Bay Area specifically. Well, it used to be the Bay Area pre-COVID. Now it's like everybody's everywhere, right? But so you have a lot of opportunities that come your way, right? A lot of potential investment opportunities, companies that want you to advise them, partners that you're going to work with in your business, new investors that you're going to bring on board, Miggos, et cetera. So how do you personally analyze whether an opportunity makes sense for you to say yes to and pursue?
Yeah, I think one framework would just be long-term thinking. So it's hard for me to get excited about anything if I don't have a 10, 20, 30-year perspective on why I'm going to do that. Even if there's a short-term opportunity to make money, I'm typically not attracted to it unless I can create a long-term vision for why I actually want to do that. So, with my first company, we approached it very much from an opportunity standpoint, not from there's a massive problem in the market, let's go solve this problem. Let's, spend the next decade or two trying to solve that problem, bring a lot of value to the world. And the problem with building companies that are, for me anyway, when you're taking the opportunistic approach instead of a kind of a mission, vision-driven approach, is company building is very hard. It's like for every 30 days that you're operating, maybe there's like one really good day in there, but like most days suck. And waking up every morning and being motivated to go do hard things is almost impossible when you don't have that long-term perspective.
What's your greatest fear being a founder?
So many fears. When you're specifically the CEO, you've recruited all of these people. You're supporting them financially. They are depending on you to be a great leader, to lead the company towards success. You end up raising capital from investors. It's real money on the line. And it's not a game. It's very serious. The stakes are high. And it's a lot of responsibility. And I think, at the end of the day, fear happens when when I'm potentially uncertain about what the future of the company looks like. And at the same time, understanding that I've got, 100+ individuals who are depending on me for this company to be successful. It's a lot of pressure. It can bring a lot of fear into your life. And I think, that's one of the reasons I do coaching. It's one of the reasons I have this great group of friends who are also in the same boat. We can depend on each other for emotional support and advice. And yeah, founder journey is not easy.
Speaking of advice, what's one piece of advice you think of anytime you face adversity?
Yeah, I think, one of the big challenge in life that we've already talked about a few times on this podcast is living on your own terms and not trying to fulfill everyone's expectations all the time. Steve Jobs has that great speech that he gave at the Stanford graduation ceremony, where he said, I've got the quote here, "For the past 33 years, I have looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something." And I think, a lot of the suffering that we as humans face on a day-to-day basis is because we're trying to fulfill someone else's perceived expectations that they have of us instead of doing what we want to do.
This is something that I've been desperately trying to change in life, right? It's been a crazy year. We won't fully get into what happened earlier this year, but in a nutshell, almost lost my wife of 10 years. And I had a lot of time to do sort of self-reflection and exploration to realize that I wasn't actually, it sounds simple, but I actually wasn't doing what I wanted to do, right? Yep. And I think discovering that and then making changes, and the way Steve put it, I thought it's really interesting. Like, some days you're not going to do what you want to do. That's fine, but not consecutively for too many days in a row, yep. Right? So I love that. So to wrap this, I want to ask one final question, which is, what's one final golden nugget or piece of advice that you want to tell the audience / aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I've got this good friend, Phil Cotters, and probably last year sometime we were hanging out, and I don't know if he came up with this or somebody else, but I wrote it down, and it's the definition of success. It says the definition of success is knowing what you want to do and then doing it. And I think, a lot of what we've talked about on this podcast really has to do with that. I think if you want to be happy and fulfilled in life, you got to first answer the question, what is it that I want to do? And then the second part is actually doing that and not caring what anybody else thinks.
Amen. So happy you're here. Thanks for being in Arizona. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I love you, bro.
Love you too.
Thank you so much for joining the Rollercoaster podcast. This was our first episode. Really excited to be delivering it to you. And I was very grateful to have my brother, Derek, in town for the podcast. The three main things that we learned in this podcast that I wanted to recap on were to first, not be afraid to try therapy, something that changed his life and has changed the lives of millions of people around the world. Second, building a powerful network will change your life and change your business. And third, discover what you want to do and then do it. Thanks for jumping on the roller coaster. We'll see you next time.